What if I told you that the person you trusted most to protect your home was actually setting you up for the biggest financial disaster of your life? What if that same person disappeared when you needed them most, leaving you with nothing but a flooded house and broken promises? My name is Benjamin, and 3 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I had the perfect house, the perfect insurance plan, and what I believed was the perfect insurance agent. Today, I'm sitting in a hotel room because my home is uninhabitable. My savings are gone, and the man who promised to protect me has vanished without a trace. If you're a homeowner in the USA or UK, what happened to me could happen to you tomorrow. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to protect yourself from the insurance industry's dirtiest secrets. But first, let me take you back to where it all started. It was January 2024 when I met Marcus Thompson. He wasn't just any insurance agent. He was recommended by my neighbor, had 20 years of experience, and drove up to my house in a BMW that screamed success. Marcus had this way of making you feel like you were his only client. He spent 3 hours walking through my house, taking notes, asking about my family, and even playing with my dog. He explained insurance in a way that actually made sense, breaking down complex terms into simple language that a regular person could understand. "Benjamin," he said, looking me straight in the eye, "I'm not here to sell you insurance. I'm here to build a relationship. When disaster strikes, and it will, you'll know that Marcus Thompson has your back." That phrase would haunt me for months. Marcus presented what seemed like the ideal insurance package. For just $200 more than my previous policy, I would get comprehensive coverage that included flood protection, replacement cost coverage, and something he called disaster response guarantee. He pulled out his tablet and showed me case studies of other clients he'd helped. There was the Johnson family whose house burned down, and Marcus personally delivered their first check within 48 hours. There was elderly Mrs. Patterson, whose roof was damaged in a storm, and Marcus held her hand through every step of the claims process. You see, Benjamin, most insurance companies treat you like a number. I treat you like family. I was sold, not just on the policy, but on Marcus himself. Looking back now, there were red flags everywhere. But when you trust someone, you explain away the inconsistencies instead of questioning them. The first sign was the paperwork. Marcus handled everything digitally, sending documents to my email that I was supposed to sign and send back immediately. "Time sensitive," he'd say. "Rates are going up next week." When I asked for physical copies, he laughed it off. "Sarah, we're in 2024. Everything's digital now. It's better for the environment, and honestly, it's more secure than paper documents that can get lost or stolen." The second red flag was his communication style. Marcus was always available when he wanted something from me, but when I had questions about my policy details, it would take days for him to respond. When he did, his answers were vague and often redirected to trust the process. The biggest warning sign was the premium payments. Instead of paying the insurance company directly, Marcus insisted I pay through his personal payment system. "It's easier this way," he explained. "I handle all the back-end processing, and you get better customer service because everything goes through me first." I should have questioned this. I should have called the insurance company directly. I should have done a lot of things differently. The community connection, what made Marcus so convincing, was how embedded he seemed in our community. He sponsored local sports teams, attended church events, and was always posting on social media about helping families protect their futures. He had testimonials from dozens of local families, a professional website, and even business cards with the logos of major insurance companies. Everything looked legitimate because in many ways it was. Marcus was a licensed insurance agent. He did work with major companies. The problem was what he was doing behind the scenes. Marcus understood something that most people don't realize about the insurance industry. There's a gray area between legitimate business practices and outright fraud, and skilled operators can live in that gray area for years before anyone catches on. The false security for 8 months, everything seemed perfect. I received policy documents that looked official, got regular emails about account updates, and even received a small payout when my fence was damaged in a windstorm. Marcus handled everything personally, and the check arrived within a week. This small claim was actually part of his strategy, though I didn't realize it at the time. By processing one small, legitimate claim quickly and efficiently, Marcus built my confidence in both him and the system. I bragged to friends about my amazing insurance agent who actually cared about his clients. What I didn't know was that Marcus had paid for that fence repair out of his own pocket. The claim was never actually filed with the insurance company. It was an investment in maintaining my trust, and it worked perfectly. The perfect storm approaches by September 2024. Marcus had become more than just my insurance agent. He was someone I trusted completely. When he called to tell me that my policy needed to be updated due to new regulations, I didn't hesitate to approve the changes. There's some new legislation that requires additional flood coverage, he explained. It'll cost an extra $50 a month, but trust me, Sarah, you don't want to be caught without it. Climate change is making floods more common, even in areas that have never flooded before. He was right about climate change and flooding, which made his lies even more believable. Marcus mixed truth with deception so skillfully that even now, knowing what I know, I can understand why I believed him. The updated policy documents arrived within hours, looking more official than ever. I signed them electronically, approved the additional premium, and went to bed that night feeling grateful to have someone looking out for my family's interests. 3 weeks later, the storms came. The night everything changed, October 15th, 2024. I'll never forget that date because it's when my entire world collapsed in more ways than one. The weather reports had been predicting heavy rain for days, but nothing prepared us for what actually happened. What meteorologists later called a 1,000-year flood event hit our area with devastating force. In just 6 hours, we received more rainfall than we typically get in 3 months. I woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of water rushing somewhere it shouldn't be. At first, I thought it was just heavy rain hitting the windows. But when I stepped out of bed and felt the carpet squish under my feet, I knew we were in serious trouble. The water was coming up through the floorboards, seeping through the walls, and pouring in through windows that couldn't handle the pressure. Within an hour, the ground floor of my house had 2 feet of standing water, and it was still rising. The emergency response, my first instinct was to call Marcus. After all, he'd promised to be there when disaster struck. I dialed his number at 4 a.m., expecting to get his voicemail but hoping he'd answer anyway. The phone rang once, then went straight to a disconnected message. I tried again, thinking I'd misdialed in my panic. Same result. I tried his office number, his emergency contact line, even his personal cell phone that he'd given me, just in case. Nothing worked. With water continuing to rise around me, I had to focus on immediate survival. I called the emergency services, grabbed my important documents from the safe upstairs, and waited for rescue crews to arrive. The next 12 hours were a blur of evacuation, emergency shelters, and trying to process what had just happened to my home and my life. But through it all, I kept trying to reach Marcus. I sent emails, left messages on every number I could find, and even drove to his office once the roads reopened. The office was empty. Not just closed for the day, but completely abandoned. The windows were covered with newspaper, and there was a small sign that read, "Space, available for lease. The investigation begins that." When the real nightmare began. When I finally got through to the insurance company, whose logo was on my policy documents, the conversation went nothing like I expected. "I'm sorry, Miss Johnson, but we don't have any record of a policy under your name or address." I was sure there had been a mistake. I pulled out my phone and read them the policy number directly from Marcus's last email. "That policy number doesn't exist in our system. Are you sure you're calling the right company?" I spent the next 3 days on the phone with every major insurance company in the country. None of them had any record of Sarah Johnson, my address, or any of the policy numbers that Marcus had provided. It was like my insurance coverage had never existed at all. The harsh reality here. That's what I learned during those horrible weeks of investigation. Marcus Thompson was running what's called a phantom insurance scam. He was collecting real premiums from real families, but he wasn't actually purchasing insurance policies. Instead, Marcus was keeping most of the premium payments for himself and using a small portion to create fake policy documents that looked completely authentic. He had professional connections that helped him generate official-looking paperwork, complete with real company logos and convincing policy terms. For small claims, like my fence repair, Marcus would pay out of pocket to maintain the illusion. But when major disasters struck, when people like me needed their coverage most, the whole house of cards would collapse. The scale of the betrayal as I dug deeper, I discovered that I wasn't Marcus's only victim. He had been running this scam for at least 3 years, targeting homeowners across 5 different states. The police investigation eventually revealed that Marcus had collected over $2 million in fake premiums from more than 400 families. But here's the most devastating part. Marcus specifically targeted areas that were prone to natural disasters. He studied flood maps, hurricane patterns, and wildfire zones, then deliberately sold fake policies to families who were most likely to need them. He wasn't just stealing money. He was stealing people's sense of security and leaving them defenseless when disaster struck. The flood damage to my house was extensive. The ground floor was completely destroyed, including all the flooring, drywall, electrical systems, and most of our furniture and belongings. The repair estimates ranged from $80,000 to $120,000 without insurance. I was facing financial ruin. I applied for federal disaster assistance, but those programs are designed to help with basic needs, not full home reconstruction. The maximum assistance available was about $30,000, and even that would take months to process. I took out a home equity loan to start the repairs, but that meant taking on massive debt with no guarantee that I'd be able to make the payments. I was essentially gambling my family's entire financial future on the hope that somehow, someway, I'd find a path forward. The emotional toll people talk about the financial impact of insurance fraud, but they don't always discuss the emotional devastation. I didn't just lose money. I lost faith in systems I'd trusted my entire adult life. Every phone call with contractors, every conversation with banks, every interaction with government agencies was colored by the knowledge that I'd been completely fooled by someone I trusted. I questioned every decision, second-guessed every recommendation, and found myself unable to trust anyone in any official capacity. The stress affected my sleep, my relationships, and my work performance. I was constantly anxious, waiting for the next shoe to drop, wondering what other aspects of my financial life might be built on lies. The search for justice while dealing with repairs and financial stress. I was also working with law enforcement to build a case against Marcus. This process was almost as frustrating as the original fraud. Marcus had been careful to structure his operation in ways that made prosecution difficult. He'd operated across state lines, used multiple business entities, and kept minimal paper trails. Even when the police finally located him, he'd already spent most of the stolen money and hidden assets in ways that made recovery unlikely. The legal system moves slowly, especially in complex fraud cases. While Marcus was eventually arrested and charged, that didn't solve my immediate problem of having a destroyed house and no insurance coverage. Justice is important, but it doesn't pay for new drywall or replace family photos destroyed in a flood. When I thought my situation couldn't get any worse, something unexpected happened that changed everything. 3 months after the flood, while I was still living in a hotel and fighting with contractors over repair costs, I received a phone call from a lawyer I'd never heard of. "Ms. Johnson, my name is David Kim, and I represent a group of families who were victims of Marcus Thompson's insurance fraud. We've been building a class action lawsuit, and we think we've found a way to get you and other victims some real compensation." I'd heard promises before. Marcus had made plenty of them. But David was different. He spent an hour on the phone explaining exactly what they'd discovered and how they planned to help victims recover their losses. The breakthrough discovery. Here's what David and his team had uncovered. While Marcus was running his phantom insurance scheme, he was also working as a legitimate agent for several major insurance companies. Those companies have been paying him substantial commissions for the real policies he sold to other clients. Under industry regulations, insurance companies have certain responsibilities for the actions of their licensed agents, even when those agents are operating fraudulently. If the companies failed to properly supervise Marcus or ignored warning signs of his illegal activities, they could be held partially liable for victim losses. David's team had found evidence that at least 2 major insurance companies had received complaints about Marcus's unusual business practices but failed to investigate properly. They had documentation showing that Marcus's premium collection methods had raised red flags that were ignored by company supervisors. The class action lawsuit wasn't just about getting money back. It was about holding the entire insurance industry accountable for the systems that allow predators like Marcus to operate. During the legal discovery process, we learned that Marcus's scheme wasn't unique. Similar frauds were happening across the country, often following the same basic pattern. Licensed agents collecting real premiums for fake policies, targeting disaster-prone areas, and disappearing when major claims occurred. The insurance industry knew this was a problem, but they hadn't taken adequate steps to prevent it. Company supervisors were supposed to monitor agent activities, verify that premiums were being properly applied to real policies, and investigate unusual patterns in agent behavior. Instead, many companies were operating on what lawyers called a willful blindness policy. As long as they could claim they didn't know about specific fraudulent activities, they felt protected from liability for their agents' crimes. The settlement victory after 18 months of legal battles. We reached a settlement that exceeded everyone's expectations. The insurance companies agreed to pay a total of $12 million to Marcus's victims, with individual payouts ranging from $30,000 to $150,000, depending on each family's losses. My settlement was enough to complete the repairs on my house, pay back the emergency loans I'd taken, and even provide some compensation for the months of stress and displacement my family had endured. But more importantly, the settlement included changes to industry practices that would make it much harder for future Marcus Thompsons to operate. As part of the settlement, the insurance companies agreed to implement several new consumer protections. First, they established direct payment verification systems. Now, when you pay insurance premiums, you can verify directly with the insurance company that your payments have been received and properly applied to an active policy. Second, they created mandatory agent supervision protocols. Insurance agents are now subject to regular audits of their client accounts, with particular attention paid to agents who use unusual payment processing methods or have high volumes of small claims. Third, they implemented consumer education programs designed to help homeowners identify potential insurance fraud before they become victims. These changes won't prevent all insurance fraud, but they'll make it much more difficult for operators like Marcus to succeed on such a large scale. What you can do today if you're a homeowner in the USA or UK. Here are the specific steps you should take right now to protect yourself. Always verify your insurance coverage directly with the insurance company. Don't rely solely on your agent's word or documents. Call the company's customer service line at least once a year to confirm that your policy is active and your premiums are being properly applied. Be suspicious of agents who insist on unusual payment methods. Legitimate insurance companies have standard payment processing systems. If your agent wants you to pay through personal accounts or unofficial payment processors, that's a major red flag. Keep detailed records of all your insurance communications. Save emails, text messages, and written documents. If something goes wrong, these records will be crucial for any legal action or insurance company investigations. Research your agent's background before signing any policies. Check with your state's insurance regulatory office to verify that your agent is properly licensed and hasn't been subject to disciplinary actions. The ongoing impact 2 years later. My house has been fully repaired, and my family has moved back home. The physical damage from the flood is gone, but the experience changed us in ways that will last forever. We're more careful now about who we trust with important financial decisions. We ask more questions, demand more documentation, and never assume that professional credentials guarantee honest behavior. But we're also more resilient. Going through this experience taught us that we can survive much worse situations than we ever imagined. When you've rebuilt your entire life from scratch, smaller problems don't seem as overwhelming. Marcus Thompson is currently serving a 6-year prison sentence for insurance fraud, but he'll eventually be released. And there are dozens of other people running similar schemes right now, targeting families who think they're protected but are actually completely vulnerable. The insurance industry has made some improvements since our lawsuit, but the fundamental problem remains. There's still too much money to be made from insurance fraud, and not enough oversight to catch all the criminals. Your best protection isn't hoping that regulators will catch bad actors before they hurt you. Your best protection is being informed, asking the right questions, and never trusting anyone completely with your family's financial